The Edmonton Oilers are going to need to make some additions ahead of the March 7th deadline. But one thing that GM Stan Bowman is going to run into is that he doesn't have very many assets to deal from. There are a handful of reasons why. First off, the Oilers don't really have any decent young players playing in the NHL right now that they could move out in a trade or try to get some draft picks for. Everyone that's on the team right now is going to be needed for the playoff run. So there's really not anyone they could sacrifice in a deal. If they're going to make a trade, it's pretty much going to have to be future assets. Yeah, they could move on from a guy like Jeff Skinner, but that would be a cap dump. You're not getting anything back for someone like Jeff Skinner, who's been healthy scratched a handful of times over the last month. As far as future assets go, they don't have that many big name prospects either. And the few that they do have, like Matt Savoy, Sam O'Reilly, and Bo Akey, they need those players to pan out so they can inject some good, young, and cheap players into their lineup over the next few seasons when extensions start to kick in for guys like Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, Stuart Skinner, and even Evan Bouchard. So what does Stan Bowman have to deal with here? This is my prediction for the assets that the Oilers will trade ahead of the March 7th deadline. First, let's look at the draft picks. They don't have a first rounder in 2025, although they could push that to a conditional 2026 first rounder from their deal with the Philadelphia Flyers back in the 2024 draft. So they don't have a first rounder this year, although they could swap that with 2026. They have a second and a third rounder, no fourth rounder, no fifth rounder, and they have 6th and 7th round picks. Now, you don't want to totally deplete your draft stock. So I think the Oilers could trade one of their second or third rounders, probably more likely to be their third rounder. I'll add that into my they will trade it pile. Next season, 2026, they actually have a pick in every single round. So I think they could dip into that stockpile a little bit and potentially trade their second round pick in 2026. So when you look at that sort of bundle of picks, the second and the third rounder this year, the second and the third rounder next year, I think they could move two of those and also the fourth rounder in 2026. So I think they have 3 draft picks that they could put in a pile and say, we can use these picks to get an upgrade on our team right now. As far as the prospects go, like I said, I wouldn't touch any one of Matt Savoy, Bo Akey, or Sam O'Reilly because I think you're banking on those guys being contributors at the NHL level. Everyone else, I'd be pretty open to moving in the right deal. I think a guy like Max Wanner at 21 years old is going to be playing NHL games in the next 12 months, but if you can get a good right shot defenseman for him now, you're in win now mode. That's a sacrifice that you can absolutely make. Up front, while again, I wouldn't move Sam O'Reilly, and I certainly wouldn't move Matt Savoy. I don't think someone like a Ruby Jarventi, who's barely played the season, has any value, but I would dangle a piece like Matvei Petrov out there. In terms of some unsigned players as well, they have a couple of guys from this past draft class, Dalen Wakely, William Nickel, even some players over in Russia like Maxim Daneshkin and Maxim Berezkin as well. Those sound very, very similar, but they are different players. I think some prospects like that, they're B- C-level prospects, but I think between those guys and the 3 draft picks I mentioned, that's kind of all Stan Bowman has to move on from. Now, the one caveat for me would be this. If you can get a high-end player with term, I would consider moving a Bo Akey. I would maybe even consider moving on from a Sam O'Reilly. I would consider the 2026 first rounder, or at least moving it around with Philadelphia and moving this year's first in a totally separate deal. That's all possible, but the player has to come with term. It has to be a Brandon Carlo or a Mike Matheson, someone who's going to help you in this playoff run and then also be around next year and help you in next year's postseason run as well. If you're giving up a major asset, you need a major piece, not a rental like they did last year at the deadline, acquiring Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick for a first-round pick. I am all for Stan Bowman making a big splash. It needs to be the right player, but if I had to put money on it, I think there is a high chance that it's a more passive deadline for the Oilers that involves some B and C level prospects going out the door and a handful of second, third, maybe a fourth-round pick going out as well. Who's your favorite trade target? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think the Oilers should absolutely be trading a first-round pick for a third consecutive trade deadline? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, hit that subscribe button because the trade talk isn't going anywhere. What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.